Jadzia Dax says the bunks on the USS Defiant are so uncomfortable. Captain Sisko is trying to cut down on his Ractigino intake. And even with a micro lathe, Chief O'Brien isn't sure he'll have Molly's dollhouse finished in time for her birthday. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, everybody.
We also have a very special guest today. He's a writer of science fiction and some Star Trek episodes you may know, Mr. Ethan Calk.
How's it going, everybody?
My name is Ryan T. Husk. Today we're doing a review of Deep Space Nine's Season 5, Episode 22, Children of Time, teleplay by Renee Echevarria, story by Gary Holland, and what do you know, Mr. Ethan Calk. How you guys doing?
Yep. Great.
All right. Gary Holland, huh?
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because there used to be a PR press guy that worked on the show with us, and he was up in the offices, and
might have been
he
him.
would
then.
do all. I don't think so. I don't know if he did any writing for the show, but I used to visit him all the time. Shout out to Gary Holland, good guy. I don't know if it's the same one.
I have heard of people that were on the staff other places pitching a story here and there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's possible, maybe.
Well, actually, yeah. Ethan, walk us through that a little bit, because there are two of you that have the story by credit. Mm-hmm. So you were saying that you kind of got credit for different parts of the story, right? Different aspects. So what's that about?
Right. My pitch was the going back in 200 years and meeting their descendants. That was my pitch. They liked it a lot and they bought it. But they also said they had this pitch of a story, and it was the Odo and Kira kind of romance developing and him being able to express it for the first time. And so they liked both of them, but they didn't know how to incorporate it until they heard my pitch. And they said, oh, we'll do it with the descendants in the past like that. And so that's kind of how they came together, and never met him. We never worked together. It's just two totally separate pitches that they bought and put together in one story.
Oh, so it's entirely possible that it's your guy, Cirroc. Like maybe he just kind of was like, hey, what do you guys think about Kira and Odo? I think, it's something like that. And, they just kind of pieced that together.
It's funny because I'm now looking this up, and it was that same Gary Holland.
Wow. That's so cool.
Very cool. I didn't know that at all.
Yeah, so Gary, like I said, here it's listed that he was the vice president and executive director of Paramount Domestic Television Advertising and Promotion. So I used to hang out at his office a lot and get a lot of free cool merchandise and stuff,
Oh, you've mentioned that before, right? You've gotten some cool stuff, like some toys and some action figures and whatnot, right?
Yeah, so anytime I wanted to, just burn some time and kind of chat with some of the guys up in the offices, I would be in these different areas of Paramount Television, advertising, promotion, the marketing. I was in these very specific locations when they were all separated. But Gary was one of them, and he had an office by the blue screen at Paramount Pictures. They had this big blue sky. That's right there when you first enter the place. But Gary was a very good guy. I heard that he went on to work for TNT later on, but I had no idea that he was actually a Star Trek fan. And on top of that he was actually pitching episodes for our show. So this is new to me. I just know him as the advertising and promotion guy.
It's like he also did got some writing credits for The Collaborator. I think that was a season 4 episode, a Vedic Barile episode. And Ethan, before we forget, I do want to point out that another one of your writing credits, which was really cool for me, was don't tell
me.
Visionary, right? And the reason I like that one is because that's the one where O'Brien is seeing like a future self or something like that, right? And that is the one that for our reviews, I'm the most proud of the title I came up with with the review. I try to come up with these clever things, and it usually fails. But this was the one where I was like, I got a good one. And so it's like he's seeing himself like in the future. So I called it seeing miles ahead.
Oh,
and then ever since then, I've been trying to chase that one and trying to come up with something as clever. And I haven't been like, I was like, this is the start of something good. And nope, it was just the only clever one I could come up with. So,
that's cool.
So thanks for that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty good. Yeah. That's, we're all just learning new things right now. This is amazing. This is bringing us all up. So Ryan, now that you bring that episode up and in correlation with this episode, my question originally, the first thing that comes to my mind is time travel and the common theme of time travel kind of, so Ethan, well, maybe you can talk about, your fascination with time travel or why you chose to kind of highlight these kinds of subjects.
I don't know. I've always liked time travel. They're kind of, if I ever see a movie on somewhere that says time travel, I'll watch it. I don't know, just the weird possibilities that can happen. Now, I pitched about, I want to say 40 or 50 stories to both Deep Space Nine and Voyager, and
wow,
these two were the only ones that sold. And there might have been another time travel, but I guess I don't know. These were the ones they liked, so it's not like I'm only time travel, but yeah, I do like it.
When you come up with these ideas, do you actually get into the minutia about how the time travel occurs? Like there's this, shield around the planet. There's the thing that we have to go through. Do you get into that when you pitch these ideas, or do you just kind of overall it?
For this one, yeah, there was some kind of shield that threw them back in time. I don't know if I did as many specifics as the writer Renee did, but I did kind of have that in the pitch. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, when I was watching this, I was really curious as to the genesis of this idea. Were you like noodling around trying to come up with ideas? Or was this just something where you're like, what would be cool is if we saw the descendants of this crew, because sometimes ideas come from the back end. Like you want a certain thing to happen, and so you come up with a story to reach that. But then sometimes the inciting incident is what kind of creates that idea, and then you ride it out to see how it goes.
Wow, that was a few centuries ago.
200 years to be exact.
I have a feeling I seem to remember it just kind of popping in my head one day. Hey, what if they go back in time and meet their descendants? So I don't really recall. I don't think it was some kind of story I wanted to tell, and then I figured out the time travel to go back. I think it just kind of popped in my head that way.
Mm-hmm. Because that's so cool. That was such a cool idea. And Cirroc, I know you're just about to jump on that, but I just wanted to just say real quick that was such a cool and fun idea. And it's no wonder that it's, as we mentioned off the air, it's one of Dave Zappone's favorite episodes. Shout out to Dave Zappone, executive producer of 455 Films, and everybody's favorite documentaries like What We Left Behind, The Captains, For the Love of Spock, the upcoming Voyager documentary. Anyway, moving on. What were you saying, Cirroc?
No, I was just going to say I really love this episode. There's so many questions that come to mind as I watch it, and I'm speaking to you. One of the things that comes to mind is was the original pitch was the existence of this timeline also contingent upon whether they left or not? Is that another aspect of it that was originally pitched by you?
Yes. I know that the whole gist of the story was that tough decision. Do they go back home and all these people never exist, or do they sacrifice themselves? That was a major part of the pitch. And one thing that they did that I had in my pitch that they didn't really look at was they kept saying, oh, all these 8,000 people that live here right now will never exist. Well, I even had it figured out, in 200 years, that's a whole lot more people than just the people that are existing right there. So I even, every generation is 20 years and maybe how many people. And so, I mean, I had this huge figure of people who would no longer exist, but they just went with the 8,000 when they wrote it, I guess for simplicity. So, but yeah, that was definitely part of the pitch, that big decision, what they should do.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Ethan. I don't know how much Star Trek Voyager you've seen.
All of it, but it's been a while.
I feel like there was a similar episode in Voyager.
There
and I don't remember what it was.
I saw it in the trivia. It was like E squared or something like that. I don't know. I do remember there being one that was very similar.
So basically, we demand a writing credit for Ethan on that Voyager episode.
We're calling right now.
I'll take a little extra residual for that.
Right. Cirroc, call Gary Holland. Get Gary Holland on the line.
We'll get Gary on the line. Just a quick note about Gary Holland, by the way. He was one of the very few black people on the Paramount lot at the time. So he was not just the vice president of domestic television, but he was a black man in those times as the vice president. So he was just hats off to him and his accomplishments. He was somebody that was definitely intelligent and respectable, and treated me with the utmost, care and kindness. So I wanted to add that too, just for people's reference point.
And in a very high position amongst all the suits at Paramount. That's really cool.
That's cool.
Pretty high position. Yes, he was there, entrenched in the, as we say, the network corporate side of the thing, as opposed to the creative artsy side of it. But he still had the ability to kind of go back and forth, obviously, by having pitched the second half of this idea, which is. I would be interested to talk to him to find out what that idea was, because we do know that at some point Odo and Kira were going to end up together anyway. So this just seemed inevitable. Yeah. So I don't know if you just go to the writers and say, "Yeah, I got an idea. Odo and Kira should get together." They were like, "Duh."
Yeah.
So there's what part of that was his idea would be very interesting to know. Maybe it was also a time travel type of episode, and they combined the ideas of time travel. I don't know. So, but I do like this episode a lot, because another aspect of it is the decision that you force Sisko to be in. Right, you put Sisko in a very tough position, which we often see him in this series, where he has to decide, what's right or what's wrong, or what the right decision or what's the right move for him and his people at the time. And in this case, he went with the needs of the many, right? Even though he was his decision was overridden by future Odo.
The needs of the one overrode him. Yeah.
Right. So I like the position you put Sisko in, as far as having to make these decisions about saving this group of people.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the other main element. The first element, we can get into a little bit later, is just all of like the factions and the way that each character kind of became a legend as time went on and kind of created their own groups and factions. But what I also really liked was that dilemma at the end. Usually we need something major at the end, a major climax, a major battle, a struggle, somebody that's on life support, fading fast and, shields up and all this kind of stuff. And it's really hard to have that sense of urgency and to keep the audience really gripped without that. But this episode absolutely does. I mean, there was basically no real climax. I mean, we obviously know where it was and what happened, but there was nothing that came, it wasn't like the Jem'Hadar are coming in and firing on them, but they still have to do this. For a moment, I thought it was going to be that the Klingon group was going to find out what their plan was and try and stop them. That's what I expected the climax to be. And it was none of that, yet this was one of the best episodes. This was so fun and so interesting, and we didn't need any of that. Ethan, was there ever a point that you kind of thought that you did need to add something more to it, or did you think that the story was interesting enough that it could stand on its own?
No, yeah, not really. I thought it was okay as it was. I in my original story did not have any kind of big climatic battle or some kind of huge event that happened. Yeah, I mean it was now a lot of it was Renee that wrote the teleplay, because a lot of those details were his. But the gist of the story was pretty much the same thing that I had pitched to them in the story that I wrote up for them.
What stands out to me and what really pushes this story along, and I think it's the piece of the puzzle that makes it work. And the piece of the puzzle that makes it work for me is Dax and this symbiont. Mm-hmm. And so essentially it's as if Dax is still alive, because she can remember her past lives.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And to me, that's the linchpin of the story. And my question is now to you, Ethan, was that something that you thought up and was, were really relying on heavily to kind of expose what the story was about?
I know it was in there because I actually had a different first name for the Dax character. I don't even think I remember what it is now, but I know they changed the name when they wrote that. So I know that was in there, and it did play a part of it because she did remember, or he did remember the past from her and all the others.
Right.
Yeah, I totally agree, Cirroc. That is such an important element that really gives it that human feel, that she and all of her lineage and all the way down to Yedrin have been carrying this burden, that she's the reason that this happened. She's the reason they all got stuck. She's the reason they couldn't see their family. And she's the reason that her friend Kira dies. And, she guaranteed them. It wasn't like she just made some flippant decision. It was like Sisko basically said, "Are you sure?" And she said, yeah, I'm positive. It's fine. So that really added this powerful human element, that it's not just, like the descendants want something or don't want something, but a couple of them, including Odo, are actually still feeling the wounds that happened, 200 years ago, and she's carrying that with her. So yeah, I agree. That's a huge piece of this story.
Yeah, it makes it work totally, and I believed the performance there, because just to highlight the actor who played this future Dax, I thought he did a wonderful job of having a familiarity with Sisko. There was a comfort level there, as if he had known him so well, and however they worked that out on the set and explaining it to the actor. I thought that he did a fantastic job. I should have his name in it. Forgive me, guys, for not.
Gary Frank, does that sound right?
Gary Holland, I think. No, I'm just
kidding. No.
I believe that's what.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, he did a fantastic job conveying a kind of personal connection with Sisko that you also see with Dax. So I thought he extended that relationship, and it was believable to me, especially when they had that story about the dancer. He says, "Yeah, let me tell you about that dancer," and he's like, "All right, that's enough.
That's okay."
Yeah, no more. End it right there. We'll leave it there.
That's such a good moment.
It was a great
I watched that
moment
3
because-
times. I went back and watched it 3 times.
Yeah.
He's like that's enough. That'll
do. That'll do. And I love that moment because I feel like that's another kind of moment that we all have in our own lives, right? It's that moment where a friend brings up a story that you don't want told in this exact circumstance. You're like, oh no, yeah.
They just have to say a name or a place. Yeah, you're like, oh, yeah. All right, okay, all right. I'll buy lunch. You got it. Okay, it's my turn. You're right.
Party? Yeah. You remember your bachelor party? Yeah. The Dodgers did what?
Yeah.
You want to move on. We're not talking about that right now. So I thought that was really believable. Shout out to Renee for the teleplay, the dialogue there that also sold that. But yes, this was a fantastic episode. I wrote down Twilight Zone in my notes. Ethan, I know you're a fan of Twilight Zone, and this just had like that Twilight Zone feel to it. And I'm sure Rod Serling would sit back and be proud of this kind of an episode.
That would be cool. That would be awesome. Yeah, I do. Since you mentioned Renee doing the teleplay, he told me when they bought the story that normally when you pitch your second story, they'll give you a shot at the first draft of the teleplay. But he said, right here, we're in a time crunch. We only have like 3 months in order to get this thing on the air, so they're going to do it in-house. And I'm really glad they did, because I don't think I could have done nearly as well as it came out. Maybe today, maybe now that I've had a lot more experience writing, but back then, I don't think I would have done it nearly as much justice. So shout out to him.
You shouldn't sell yourself short, but yeah, I mean, that is true. You do have 25 years more knowledge and experience now, whereas back then, were you happy when they said, we'll just take it from here, or did you kind of wish you had a stab at it at that time?
At the time, I had wished I'd had a stab at it. I was really looking forward to doing something like that. No, if I had gone and met with them in the writer's room and we worked out the story for 2 or 3 days, yeah, maybe so. But just cold like that off my story, no, I couldn't have done anything like that as well. But maybe that's where the writer's room and where the whole group sitting down, breaking it all down, maybe that's where a lot of that comes from.
Oh, I also wanted to talk about, sorry, we're going to take a break in just a minute here. But actually go for it, Cirroc. What do you got?
No, I was just going to add the fact that maybe also because they are combining 2 stories, that they have the luxury of the other guy's pitch, and so they know kind of how they want to blend them. So I would just give them an excuse for that as well. But yes, they did a fantastic job. I just put this in the Twilight Zone category of just episodes that are standalone classic episodes where it's just like, it becomes one of those self-fulfilling prophecies. It's one of those things where you can rewatch it over and over again and just see different nuances of it. Definitely a great episode.
Oh man, that's self-fulfilling prophecy stuff. Man, I started to get lost in that thought of like, well, wait, if they're going back 200 years, and then does that mean it's going to happen again? And I was like, no, don't even think about it. It's not going to enter into play in this episode. Don't give yourself a headache, because that kind of stuff can blow your mind when you start actually trying to like follow along. So anyway, I made the smart decision of just don't think about it. Just focus on this current story. I do want to talk about on the other side, everybody that's at home that's just listening and not watching, Ethan and I do have matching backgrounds, but we'll talk about that. And Cirroc, I definitely want to talk about, because I felt a little pressure on your shoulders in this episode. So we'll talk about that on the other side, if at all possible. So we'll be right back on our on the 7th rule. We're going to take like the super quickest break you've ever seen, and we'll be right back.